Hello and warm welcome to yet another exciting edition of the Final Take with me, Seni MK Marina, live from our virtual studios here in Seattle. Here is a look at what's coming up on the Final Take. The state of the country's economy and the UDP 5-point agenda. We discuss the development sustainability with Larry Cisse, a former UN official and chairman of the UDP Policy and Program Committee, asking how can Gambia inject new energy into its economy and revitalize growth. Also coming up on the program, prominent right activist Mahdi Jobate examined hate speech and its implication on the country's democratic space. That's the final take with me, Seni MK Marina, discussing a week of current affairs, including sports, as Gambia judoka and three-time Olympian Fainjai tell us all about the experience at the Paris Olympic and the future of judo in the Gambia. Ongulare, who's supposed to be our guest, is unable to attend right now. So we'll go straight to Mahdi Jobate, who is a prominent right activist in the country. So, Mr. Jobate, welcome to the final take with me, Seni MK Marina.
Okay, thank you, MK. I'm glad to be here, and I'm not surprised you would come with something like this. So keep up the great work you are doing. We need more journalists, strong journalists like yourself. So I'm glad to be here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jobate. Tell us, why is hate speech particularly damaging to emerging democracies seeking unity and cohesion? More emphasis on the case in the Gambia.
Yeah, thank you, MK. When you analyze the context, even the history and the nature of hate speech, you realize that hate speech is actually rooted in societies and cultures which have patriarchy as a background, which have racism, sexism as in their background, which have certain deep-seated socio-cultural beliefs, that are completely not enlightened, not informed, and certainly, above all, not founded on human dignity, human rights. Hate speech, from a rights perspective, is said to be speech expressions which can come in different forms that you direct towards an individual or a group based on their, their identity.
Yes.
Such identity could be race or tribe, but also could be about their sex, as women, for example, but also, or men, but also it could be about even some characteristic like their disability. So to look at a person or a group and therefore give them a description or make some derogatory remark or of any kind, but based upon their identity, so that where this comes from, as I said, is that if you look at racism, for example, is because you have societies that are racist. Say you are in the United States, you have white societies been going back into the period of slavery, colonialism. There's this narrative, which you would even find scholars say, because we are different, and because as a dominant group of people, say white people, so therefore black people are less intelligent or things like that, or they are more prone to violence just because they are black, and so on. But also we have these narratives, which sometimes are associated with religion or with culture, that women are weak or women are evil, and so on, or socio-culturally to hold the belief that persons with disabilities it's sort of like a punishment. God made somebody like this simply because, want to punish you and so on. So to hold those views and then direct it to somebody, would be hate speech. And what makes it dangerous for democracies like ours or any democracy, particularly emerging democracies, when these kinds of, conservative, patriarchal, racist kind of ideas are politicized, are brought into the political domain, it means instead of talking about issues, instead of holding elected and appointed public officials accountable or institutions, the narrative drops down to look at individuals in terms of who or what they are. Their tribe, their sex or gender, their disability, their age, in fact, and or their origin. So that in our context, it can be about caste. Or where one is from, or and so on. So that what that means is, we don't now talk about the issue completely, which is what we need to discuss, but rather we are focused on, what are the characteristics or what are the identity of Madi, as a person, based on my tribe, my religion, based on my, and so to look at things from that perspective. And so to address me, because Madi, you are from this tribe, those people are like this, you are from this religion, those people are like this, because he's from this, he has disability, that's why he's behaving like this, and so on. And which is
Mr. Madi,
problematic because it
just
undermines
to
democracy.
okay, just to bring you the context, particularly in the Gambia, the country has witnessed recently a lot of hate speech from different political players. And as a right activist, are you concerned about the trend of hate speech in the country, and how do we mitigate this going into elections in 2026?
Yeah, I mean, it's concerning. As you said, hate speech exists in our politics. Uh, but again, as I try to define what hate speech is, that it's also speech that is not hate speech from a rights perspective, but it is still dangerous speech. So, for example, the most recent
So
case
what is the
that,
difference? What is the difference between a hate speech and a dangerous speech? Because many people confuse this, and politicians, use remarks like that, and they say it's not hate speech. So what is the? Can we draw a fine line between hate speech and dangerous speech in this context?
yeah, so I would say every hate speech is dangerous speech, because it seeks to harm the human rights, the human dignity of individuals. But not every dangerous speech is hate speech. So dangerous speech would be speech that, of course, would seek to generate hate against an individual or demonize, caricature, or, even threaten an individual, but not on account of his or her identity, which is the difference now, that it is not a hate speech because it is not really based on or directed at his or her identity. But still, the speech is such that it can generate hatred, contempt, ridicule, caricature against a person. So a good example of a dangerous speech is what the president recently said about,
Yeah, that's my next question. So what classification will you give to the remark made by President Barrow on Saturday at a political rally in Brikama against the UDP leader? Could you classify this as a hate or dangerous speech?
yes, so I would classify that as dangerous speech, not hate speech, simply because the remark by the president directed at Dabo was not focused or centered on Dabo's identity, his ethnic or religious or disability or age or some other status, sort of. Rather, the speech was directed at the passing of Useno concerning his life. And so, given that this speech is coming from a president, and even in advanced democracies where they have presidents or heads of government, they are powerful people. Their words can really, trigger reactions. I mean, positive, negative. So that when a president makes a certain kind of remark against a person, it becomes concerning. And so in this case, the president's remark is dangerous in the sense that it is left to the interpretation now of any, say, supporter of Barrow or even a supporter of Dabo to want to take action as a result of their speech, which in the final analysis would just threaten the peace and stability of the country. But the speech is dangerous in that context. It's dangerous in the context that it is making reference to the life of a political leader, connecting it to the tenure of a president, which are completely not connected, because there are specific ways in which a person becomes a president of the Gambia, or stops to be a president of the Gambia. And all the requirements for that, there is no thing in our constitution that links to the death of a a political leader. So to make
But do we have a law? Do we have a law in our in our law books that talks about hate speech? And do we have a law on hate speech?
No, we don't have a law specifically on hate speech, but one can look at the laws and consider that these are within, they capture the essence of hate speech. So that, for example, if you look at our constitution, it gives the right to freedom of expression. Now, freedom of expression, from a rights perspective, when you understand it, you realize that it does not include hate speech. All right. There are rights of women, for example, right to of persons with disability, and those rights would include that nobody, describes or expresses statements about a person with disability on account of his or her disability, or describes a woman on account of his or her sex, or even a man. All right, as well. So when you look at the constitution in the broader sense, it talks about it. I mean, even if you look at the criminal code, there are certain provisions that speak to, people not making remarks against religion in a certain way. So that when you expand that, it essentially would mean, don't, attack somebody or make expression about somebody on account of his religion in a negative way. So, but specifically, we don't have hate speech mentioned, which is necessary that we have either a law on it, or the Constitution and the Criminal Code provisions that contain or address hate speech.
Yeah, it's generally challenging to regulate political speech. Even here in the US, you hear politicians throwing words at each other. But are there important lines, and how do they help to encourage meaningful dialogue within a democratic space like the Gambia? What should politicians do, to ensure that, the country is devoid of political and hate speech at a time when the country is highly polarized?
Yeah, so I think for the Gambia, I would say first and foremost, hate speech, dangerous speech, political intolerance is more expressed and encouraged by politicians first and foremost. We just talked about the comments Barrow made. I remember, in the run-up to the 2021 election, Dembo by Force Bojang also made a comment at a political rally saying if a certain political party wins, other tribes are in trouble. They sort of will be kicked out. Now, those kinds of comments are not helpful. Of course, we remember Jammeh himself, even though he's not around, but, when we try to trace its history, in 2016, when he had described, the Mandinka as vermins, as non-Gambians, and things like that. So this practice of hate speech, dangerous speech, and of course, when we follow all the WhatsApp comments, audios or groups of all the the political parties, you can see their supporters. They may not hold any position in any political party, or they may be some rank and file, supporter or just a sympathizer who nobody cares. But then you can hear, in their platforms, hate speech being made. I mean, Barrow himself, not before this, you can, when he made reference to the NAR shop, of the mayor of KMC,
Yeah.
who is not, they took it up, as it is. But then to describe UDP bureaus as just like NAR shop, which, would, to me, constitute hate speech, because certainly you are not speaking about the NAR or that shop in any positive manner. And so, any remark you make in a derogatory manner and associated with an ethnic group, for me, would constitute hate speech. So for me, our main problem with regards to hate speech is coming from the political class. I mean, the politicians, political leaders, and their surrogates and supporters. And then, of course, we have a problem of hate speech because our society is still a largely conservative, traditional society. And, two things. There is something that is positive. We have joking relationships, for example, between ethnic groups, between people who belong to different regions.
Yeah.
All right. And we see that being expressed all the time. Between Jola and, say, Fuller and, Serir and Yang and Badigo and so on. Between certain surnames, and so on. So, which is positive, which can, be used positively for our governance, for our democracy, and so on. But again, it can also be very dangerous, and instances of that also have happened, where we cross the line, that cultural barrier to get into a politicized environment or speech that basically is would constitute hate speech, So, which means there needs a serious education so that we can, in one sense, maintain our good cultural values and practices in the case of these joking relationships. But in another sense, to also realize that these things don't have to cross into the political discourse, because that is where usually hate speech manifests itself. Now, you made a important point about hate speech, to control it, and in terms of freedom of expression. So I am for us to address hate speech, but hate speech also, we got to be careful in creating law around it, so that in the final analysis we don't damage or infringe on freedom of expression, and so on. All right. I know in some societies, let's say the US itself, practically there is no restriction to hate speech by law. Because they have this guaranteed freedom of expression. I think they call it First Amendment in the Constitution. So that in the US and other places, hate speech is been addressed from a political point of view. From a political point. That is, when someone makes a hate speech. I remember the Republican Party has this prominent politician, Marjorie Green Taylor, something like that.
Margaret Green Taylor.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you may get the name right. And she made a comment regarding Jews, and Jews basically, and her own party came to condemn her for those comments. All right. So that she's not taken to court. There is no law sort of that will say she has violated. But then the political class, her own party condemned her to the point that she herself had to apologize and withdraw her comments. Now, that is the unfortunate thing we are not getting in the Gambia. Even though we saw when Barrow made this dangerous speech.
That's my question. When Barrow made that comment, when that Barrow made that comment, it received a widespread condemnation.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Maddie. Go ahead.
Yeah. So which is to say, sometimes we can address hate speech not by law but through the political process, so that when somebody makes a hate speech or dangerous speech, your party can discipline you, for example, or other political parties, political actors You have other structures. We have like the IEC, for example. We have the Inter-Party Committee. We have the National Human Rights Commission. We have civil society, and so on. All of these can come and say, look, what you said, Madi, is dangerous speech, is hate speech, withdraw it. And that pressure can make me withdraw and apologize my comments, all right, but also serve as a deterrent for myself in future and for anybody else to make to know that if you make dangerous speech, there are consequences that you will face.
Absolutely,
right. Unfortunately, the pressure has not been large enough to make Barrow withdraw and apologize for his dangerous speech. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Madi. For those watching us, this is the final take with me, Seni Marena, having Madi Jobate, a prominent human rights activist, talking about the hate speech and its implication on the democratic space in the Gambia. Mr. Jobate, the Gambia is essentially going through a very thorough, very serious transition from repression to an emerging democracy. How should our political leaders and representatives approach messaging and public communication, looking at the trend of hate speech in the country ahead of the 2016 elections?
Yeah, I think we got to remind our political parties, and they know this. If you are a political party leader, and let us just say first and foremost a political party. What is a political party? A political party is a government in waiting or in power. That is why the political party that is running the government, we call it a ruling political party, the ruling party. And those other parties are called the opposition. And opposition may not be a fanciful name or the appropriate name, but all the other political parties are governments in waiting. And so a political party runs the government. They produce the president, National Assembly members, mayors, and councillors, and these are the people who run the institutions of governance and development in our country, from the executive, the legislature, local councils, and so on. So that when a political party, a politician understands that, then it puts it in your mind that you have a primary responsibility to act according to the law, to act according to human decency, to act according to sacred values and standards, simply because you want to run this country. So if you want to run this country, naturally you have to respect the laws of this country. You have to agree and abide by and promote things that will promote peace and unity and stability, and respect between individuals. So this is as clear as that. So what we can tell our political parties really is to always remember, why are you a member of a political party? And what is a political party? If you're a politician, what does that mean? It means you want to get elected, or you want to get a party elected, to run this country. And if you want to do that, then you are a leader of this country. If you're a politician, therefore, you are a leader in this country. All right? And so if that is the case, it means you have a primary duty to make sure, you abide by, high values and standards of the law, of our culture, and, our religion, because all of these are instruments, elements that are critical in our governance, in our development. All right. So this is what I want to tell our politicians and political parties, that, you bear responsibility. So don't generate dangerous speech. Don't generate hate speech. Don't trigger or incite violence. Don't be intolerant. You got to be open and tolerant. All right. And, don't do anything that will polarize and divide our people. And all of this is coming from our political class. And we need to remind them of really the very essence of their being as politicians, as political parties. Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Jobate, thank you for that brilliant explanation on hate speech. Now, when President Barrow, made that statement in Brikama, it received widespread condemnation from across all political spectrum. And there were others who were even saying the president should come and apologize because he's the president and commander-in-chief. And then statements like that has a huge impact on the population. Do you think that President Barrow should come and apologize for the comment he made against Usainu Dabo, the leader of the UDP?
Yeah, I think he should have apologized, not just to Dabo, but to all Gambians. MK, people have to understand themselves and understand what they are involved with. All right. I mean, there's a saying that no one is infallible, and to err is human.
Yeah.
To forgive is divine, something like that. And in history, we know of many instances where leaders, either by their words or actions, came back to apologize for that. And it doesn't make you less and so on. In fact, it only can strengthen you. Even a leader who I have absolutely no regard for, the former Prime Minister of the UK, Boris Johnson, was forced to apologize for his criminal and irresponsible parties during the COVID
colonialism
time in the UK. Yeah. So leaders would apologize, and I would have expected that Barrow himself, but also his advisors, across the board, including his cabinet ministers, would have all recognized that the statement he said is totally irrelevant. Right? Even before we get to how dangerous it is, but it is totally irrelevant. All right, it has no value whatsoever to any argument he was trying to make or to any issue he was trying to address. So it was a totally irrelevant, a comment. It was totally irresponsible, and it is dangerous. So they should have advised him. This is something that you should not have said. So come out easily and retract it, and then apologize. But it's unfortunate he did not do that. Rather, we see his bunch of supporters and ministers
coming to his defense.
Dr. Ismail Sise and others. Yeah, coming to defend what is indefensible when Ismail Sise or this Suleiman Kamara from NPP, also a presidential advisor, you know very well in your own mind, in your own heart, that this is a wrong statement. And you still want to ridicule yourself, you want to ridicule the president to come to defend something like this. It makes no sense.
Absolutely, it makes no sense, Ongul Madi Jobate. Before I let you go, because I have a lineup of a lot of guests, and it seems you have taken much of my time. But finally, before I let you go, are you concerned about the state of democracy in the country, looking at the political situation?
Yeah, I'm hugely concerned. For most Gambians, dictatorship is over, and for most Gambians, we are in a democracy. We can debate: are we in a democracy or in a dictatorship? Generally, I say we are in a dictatorship, and I think many people find that difficult to pick. But then it is based on what obtains the reality. One can point to a lot of things and say, we are making progress towards democracy. Press freedom, when you look at it, it's improved greatly from 2017, from where it was before 2016. We have created institutions like the NHRC, access to information law. We have created laws like access to information law, even prevention and prohibition and prevention of torture act. We are all created here. The Disability Act have been created. I mean, so one can point to all of those things and, claim, yes, we have democracy and this is good progress. And indeed, it is good progress that we have all of these things in place. But, at the end of the day, democracy, we still have a lot more laws that are threatening to democracy. And some of them are before the parliament. I hope they will change them. But beyond the laws, it's also about institutions, so that we have the necessary institutional reforms, institutions, not just to reform them in terms of their laws, but even not just to equip them, all right, in terms of resources and materials and so on to do their job, but also, I mean, how well have we made those institutions abandon dictatorship tendencies? So that you only look at the Gambia police force. Why are you, say, denying people to protest or limiting, giving permit for protest in a way that effectively is just going to make protest useless? Why are you arresting people unnecessarily, all right, for merely expressing their political points of view, which is not hate speech, it's not dangerous speech, at all. So those kinds of practices, and then overall also the incidence of corruption, where corruption exists, and to a certain level, it pushes the society towards dictatorship. So that in the Gambia, I mean, the incidence of corruption is so widespread and deep, and that can only harm democracy, and and we have seen how that manifested itself in the way the president responded to Dabo, because Dabo was raising the issue of the land that was allocated to the president, which is unlawful, which is corruption. All right, so that can tell you how corruption can go to threaten human rights and democracy. All right, so this is why we need to understand when we say democracy, so that at the end of the day, for me, after 8 years, I have seen a government that is, taking steps, very weak steps here and there towards democracy, was, simply because it has failed to do the necessary legal reforms, the necessary institutional reforms, the necessary constitutional reforms, but also to make sure certain practices of the past don't happen, whether it is police brutality, all right, or it is about corruption, about inefficiency. Because, MK, we got to understand democracy is not just about civil and political rights, all right? Freedom of expression, freedom of the media, political activities. No. Democracy is also about bread and butter, all right? So that when you look at it, the quality and the delivery of public services in this country, the cost of public services, cost of living in this country, the hopelessness that exists in this country, forcing our young people to go the back way, or people, even educated people, seeking, trying to leave the Gambia, because they have no hope in their country. All of this undermine democracy, so that we
Absolutely.
need to address all of those things, as it is. I mean, one can go on and on to say these
Yeah,
things, MK. But
absolutely,
we are coming to the
Angul Madi. As I said, you have taken a lot of time because your conversation is very interesting. So thank you very much
thank you.
for joining us. Angul Madi is joining us from live from Banjul. So thank you, and do have
Yeah.
a wonderful weekend. That's
Thank
prominent
you.
right
Thank you.
activist Madi Jobate examine the impact of hate speech and effective communication in emerging democracies. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Madi Jobate. Next
Thank
on
you.
the program, let's stay with human rights and strengthening of transitional justice. The Gambia is expanding its effort to prosecute Jammeh-era crimes. The creation of a hybrid court is at an advanced stage, but can the Gambia effectively implement the process in the absence of a new constitution? Let's ask lawyer Gay So, who joined us live from US in Maryland, to talk about this issue. First, Mr. Gay So, welcome to the final take. With me, Seni Marena, here in our virtual studios in Seattle. Mr. So, can the Gambia effectively set up a hybrid court without international support?
Is muted. Sorry. Jenny, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you for having me. And keep up the great job you're doing. Just
Thank
that
you.
I think you should smile a bit more.
Yeah, I will
again.
smile. I will say they said I'm too serious, but I'm a serious person too, so don't mind my face. But anyway, on your serious note, thank you for sparing your time to join us on this show to discuss about the draft constitution and the proposed hybrid court to prosecute ex-president Yahya Jammeh.
Thank you. Thanks, Jenny. Like I said, Happy to be here. I should have been resting, but you got me to be here at this time. I'm on break. And, yeah, but I'll send you a bill. Just to clarify, of course, I'm not speaking on behalf of the ECOWAS court at the moment. I'm speaking as a Gambian, and of course, you raised two important issues, as in the hybrid court. It's about the Gambia trying to get ECOWAS involved. So
yeah.
What I'm saying, I'm not saying on behalf of ECOWAS. In fact,
Yeah.
they have a committee for that purpose.
Absolutely.
And I'm not part of that committee, just to clarify that. And
okay.
Of course, so you raised two things, the hybrid court and the draft. So for the hybrid court, I just maybe would try to explain why it is needed. I'm not doing so on behalf of government because I don't work for government, but I really was part of some of the conversation. So just what I think, and then after that, we will then go into.
Yes, I have a lineup. I have a lineup of questions for you.
Okay.
So for the first, I'm asking you first. What are the biggest challenges impending transitional justice in the Gambia? That's my first question. As a human rights lawyer and someone who has been involved in the transitional justice processes in the Gambia and elsewhere in Africa.
Thank you. Transitional justice has many pillars. One of them is truth seeking. Let's try to find out what happened, like they did in South Africa, the Truth Commission, like they did in many parts of South America, places like Ghana, even Nigeria did something similar to Tunisia. We did ours, which was the TRRC. And of course, another pillar is accountability. Accountability, I wouldn't be talking about all the pillars, but for the purpose of our discussion today, the second pillar is on accountability. And if you read the very comprehensive report presented, released after the TRRC proceedings, it was specifically recommended that certain people need to be brought to justice. Even if you look at the law that set up the TRRC, it provided persons who bear the greatest responsibility should be brought to justice. So it's not new. Gambia wouldn't be the first to do it. So we had the TRRC, a lot of revelations made, and then now we're talking about holding those who bear the greatest responsibility accountable. And that comes with challenges, challenges of funding. You remember the Hussein Habre trial that took place in Senegal. We were told it cost maybe more than $80 million to bring one person to justice. And if you want to do so in the Gambia, remember we're not talking about just holding the former head of state to account. We're also talking about holding persons who bear the greatest responsibility to account. So where will you get the money to make sure that happens? But other than that too, there are also challenges with respect to our laws. I don't want to personalize because your question was about bringing Jammeh to justice. But if you look at the report, it was a lot beyond just Jammeh. There were other people the commission felt the Truth Commission felt we should prosecute. But what I want to say, if you look at the Constitution, particularly Section 69(3), if you, for example, thinking of taking the former president to justice, the National Assembly would have to be involved. So for those of us who have our Constitution, I advise you to refer to Section 69(3). You cannot prosecute a former president under our current laws if you don't get the endorsement of the National Assembly. We all know what happened when a draft constitution was presented to the National Assembly. So do we have enough numbers to make sure that happens? There is also the problem of Section 24(5), which says you cannot create a law, a criminal law, a crime, and then have it backdated. If you look at our laws, until recently, Gambia did not have a law on torture. Of course, I have heard some lawyers say for torture you can prosecute under
International law.
under assault, but assault torture, I think there are two different things. Other than that, if you look at the TRRC report, a lot of enforced disappearances occurred. And as I speak to you, Mr. Marina, the Gambia doesn't have a law on enforced disappearances.
Wow.
So what do you do with that? And other than that, if you look at procedural matters, you have been to court, you were a reporter.
Yeah.
When people are in court, victims, when someone is testifying, who is a witness is requested to go out.
Yeah.
Including victims of the crime.
Yeah.
So, which means our law as it is does not have specifically anything. I'm talking about our laws relating to criminal procedure. They don't have anything on victim participation. If you follow the bylaw trial, the victims in that case were provided with lawyers in Germany, and they had a right to speak. Our law does not cover that right now. And you have been to court. For every submission you make, you hear a lawyer say, I object. I put it to you. So we're talking about a code that was adopted in 1933. And strictly based on the common law, this is 2024. Our rules of evidence, our rules of criminal procedure, progressive enough or good enough to deal with international crimes? I think those are very valid questions we should ask ourselves. And I think that must have informed the decision of the Ministry of Justice to at least seek help. There are inadequacies in our laws. There are inadequacies in our rules of procedure. And if you look at the report again, the TRRC report, practically they're telling us crimes of humanity were committed in the Gambia. The Gambia does not have any law called a crime against humanity. So maybe that must have informed the decision to seek for help. So get to ECOWAS, have an agreement, and at the end of the day, it then would be your responsibility to come up with a framework, because then your guiding light wouldn't be the provisions of our constitution or of our criminal procedure code, which have very, very serious limitations. Your guiding light might be, developing a law that will take care of victim participation, that will take care of witness protection, that will take care of some of the crimes I mentioned, the TRRC suggested were committed. So at the end of the day, I would say only why. But of course, there was an attempt, and from what we read in the papers, that wasn't successful. I don't think that is the end of it. I'm not, like I said, I haven't spoken to anybody at the Ministry of Justice, just telling you as a concerned Gambian. Probably they would need to start go back to the beginning. But it's also important for the government to realize maybe we're talking about something that has never been done before in our sub-region. So it's important we take this serious. It's important we speak to all the people who matter. You don't just walk into ECOWAS, you tell them this is what I want. Even Gambians don't understand what this hybrid code is about. Talk less of people who are outside the Gambia. So a lot is expected from our leaders. A lot to make sure the idea is sold to people so that we will get a buy-in.
Absolutely. For those joining us, this is the final take. With me in the studio is Gay So, a prominent lawyer, a human rights lawyer in the Gambia, now a registrar at the ECOWAS court. But Gay is not talking in his capacity as the registrar at the ECOWAS court. Instead, he is addressing issues here as a concerned citizen. So this comes to you. You highlighted a very important issue in your statement that, Gambia do not have a law to prosecute Yaya Jammeh or any other former president. This is very...
I did not say that, sorry. What I'm saying is, even if there is such a law, this question
the law has to go to the National Assembly.
No, that is, the law says 69.3, to prosecute any former president, you will need that endorsed. I can't remember, is it either 3/4 or 2/3 of all National Assembly members. So the thing is, I'm not saying there is no law. The question is whether what we have, because our criminal code was, adopted like around 1933, almost 90 something years ago. Nobody had all of these things in
So
mind.
what did the law say about prosecuting presidents, like presidents?
No, presidents, when you're in power, our constitution makes it clear you have immunity. But after you leave power, you can be prosecuted for crimes committed, provided that is endorsed by the National Assembly. So that's one challenge. The other challenge is whether the laws as they are good enough to deal with the crimes we're talking about, torture, enforced disappearances, crimes against humanity. I would say no, because we don't have any law, covering those crimes.
Wow. Okay, that's clear. It's good to clarify issues, because these are
It's one thing to have a law.
Yeah.
But it's another thing to say whether the law you have is good enough to take care of the situation you're dealing with. And I would say my answer to that is no.
So, what's your take? Do you think the country is prepared really to prosecute Jammeh, looking at the legal challenges they might face and the political commitment coming from the state?
It's difficult, but not undoable. But at the end of the day, the challenges are not just legal. There are also security challenges.
Yes.
We cannot just say overnight the former president has become so unpopular. Majority of Gambians are okay with him getting prosecuted. There are a lot of things we need to consider. I would say, when I'm asked, difficult, very, 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 very difficult, extremely difficult, but difficult and impossibility are two different things. If the will is there, if we're committed to doing it, even if it's going to take longer than we expected, of course it can happen.
Okay. Mr. So, my next question is, you were a member of the Constitutional Review Commission that was tasked to draft a new constitution in drafting that constitution, along with 10 other commissioners. But the constitution is facing a huge challenge to be adopted by the country. Recently, we have had announcement from both President Barrow and his Justice Minister that the draft constitution will likely come back to the parliament and, if possible, present to Gambians at a referendum. Do you think that there is a hope for the new constitution before the 2026 elections? And what processes do you think should be followed to ensure that this draft constitution is back to the parliament and to the Gambian people?
Thank you. You were our head of communication. So
no, I'm not talking.
No, but you know what we had to go through. I mean, but at the end of the day, I will just start by asking some questions.
Yes.
Do we still have a draft constitution? Remember, what was submitted was rejected. It's like, if it was rejected, can we still keep saying draft, 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 when what was presented was rejected? And if the AG or the president indicated they would bring the draft back, what draft? Is it the draft the CRC submitted to the National Assembly? Or we're talking about something completely? We still have to start asking ourselves that question. What do you mean by draft? Is it the draft the CRC presented, rejected, meaning you would have to revive it? Or we're talking about something new? No clarifications. I was privileged enough to do a few trainings for National Assembly members while I was still in the Gambia. And I would always make this point. I always would refer people to the process, and for those interested, if you want to be properly guided as to what it takes to change the Constitution, you have to refer to Section 226 of the 1997 Constitution. Remember, here we're not talking about amending, we're talking about replacing and repealing and replacing the 1997 Constitution. And when it comes to the process, there are different aspects. One, there is the issue of timeline. I would maybe lay it out there, and it's for you and your viewers to decide on whether we are there yet. Process. To amend any part of the new or the 1997 Constitution, timing, like I'm going to start with the timeline, you need at least 100 days to do that.
Wow.
You have it published in the Gazette before the first reading. You wait, you allow it to be in the Gazette for a period of about 90 days. And
apart from the 100 days.
No, that's I said 100 days because
Okay.
you put it in the Gazette, wait for 90 days, and then after that you have to wait for another 10 days for you to have it presented to the National Assembly. 90 plus 10, that's 100. Yeah. So when you present it to the National Assembly, for it has to go through two different stages: second reading, third reading. For the second reading, 3/4 of National Assembly members have to vote in support. We couldn't go through that phase. Yeah. 3/4. How many National Assembly members do we have now? Is it 58, 59?
58 members, yeah.
Yeah, so which means if you have about 13 members not in support, it won't go through. Remember, the last time it was presented, majority of National Assembly members supported it, but the majority did not reach the threshold you find in Section 226. So that was why it didn't even see the light of day to go to the second reading. But that's, the third reading. You have second reading, 3/4 have to support. Third reading, 3/4 have to support. So we're talking about 3/4 voting twice. And if you get your 3/4, that's about 43, 44 members supporting.
Wow.
Then we would have to have a referendum. What does the law say about that? In the referendum, more than 50% of registered voters have to vote, which means if we have it presented that after going through all that process, 3/4 twice, we say, yeah, now we have the votes needed from National Assembly members. You say now it's for Gambians to vote, yes or no. The Constitution in 226 says 50% of registered voters have to vote, which means if we have a voter turnout of about 49%, that will fail. 50% of registered members at least have to vote. And the Constitution also says that 75% of the voters have to vote yes. So 50% turnout, 75% have to vote, which for me is very important because I don't think there is any political party in the country that enjoys 75%.
Yeah, at the parliament, no.
No, I'm not talking about parliament now. I'm talking about total.
Yeah, in the country population, yeah.
Yes, yeah. You remember at the last time, the Doyce, the Mama Candace party, all the others did not oppose. So the problem was with UDP and PP. So my message is, we cannot continue, or we can never have a new constitution for as long as the NPP and the UDP are on opposite camps, because NPP has more than 25% support. The UDP too has more than 25% support, and all you need to defeat any effort is 25%. So the leaders of both parties have to be on the same page.
The chances of the draft constitution coming back is very slim, looking at the situation in the country, with different political parties having different interests.
No, but for me, at the end of the day, the bottom line is, I don't think it's slim if we have our biggest parties, because if the NPP and the UDP put their heads together, they decide we definitely will bring back the constitution. I'm sure those parties together, because we haven't had opposition from the smaller parties. I think the only
this is something, Mr. Gay, me and you know is very unlikely looking at the political situation in the country.
I don't know. That's something we would have to work on. Because at the end of the day, I think other than the APRC, we haven't seen opposition from any other.
Yeah, we have some independent
candidates. All the others. Yeah, but the DOI is the others. If they come together with the UDP and NPP, I'm sure we'll have 80%. So the bottom line is, for us to get there, our biggest players have to be on board. Our biggest players have to be on board. So we should stop fooling ourselves, because with all due respect, bringing back the new constitution is a lot bigger than the current president. The president does not have 75% support. The UDP too does not have 75% support. So they need to be, because if we were to say, if all the other smaller parties, no disrespect to those parties, just based on reality, if they're to come together, they will constitute 30%, then we're in trouble. But it's not, they're not they're not opposing the adoption of a new constitution. So there is a need for, I'm not saying the other parties are not important. Everybody in that country is important, because if we do not turn out to vote, nothing would happen. But it's important we have our biggest parties to be on the same page.
So you are saying that without a compromise among our biggest political players, the likelihood of this draft constitution, is going to be a far-reaching. It's not
personally. I don't think it will happen, because NPP. You can't say NPP has less than 25% of voters. You cannot also say UDP has less than 25% of voters.
Right.
Yeah. So it's about working with the smaller parties, provided the two dons are speaking the same language. That is, if we want a new constitution. It's one thing to say you want a new constitution, it's another to mean it. If we really, really want a new constitution, we can't run away from the fact that the biggest parties have to be together.
Absolutely. And then it's almost 2 years to the elections, and then still the draft constitution is in coma. As Chairman Jallo will say, the draft constitution is in coma, but it will certainly come back. For those watching, this is the final take. With me, Seni Marena. In the studio is lawyer Gay So talking about the draft constitution and the proposed hybrid court to prosecute Jammeh. Mr. Gay, before I let you go, finally, let's talk about, we're still talking about the prospect of the constitution. How will a new charter help to effectively implement transitional needs and transitional needs and the white paper recommendation? Because the draft is a very, very good document. You and I, both work on this draft constitution, and then it has been one of the best draft constitutions so far, because Gambians from all walks of life, from diaspora, all took part in the constitutional building process. So how do you think that having this new constitution will help in our transitional needs and also, strengthening our democratic dispensation?
Yeah, earlier on I said transitional justice has different pillars. I talked about truth seeking, which was why we had the TRRC. I also talked about accountability, those found responsible, the need for us to bring them to justice. Another very important pillar is law reform. I mean, pick up the 1997 Constitution. You don't need to be a lawyer to know the president under the current dispensation has near absolute powers. You don't need to run by your cabinet through parliament. For most appointments he can do, he can hire, he can fire. I mean, really, really, really powerful. But we are even not just talking about the office of the presidency. There are a lot of, I don't know, because I appeared before the TRRC as an expert witness, and I tried pointing out the gaps we have in the 1997 Constitution, and I don't think that has changed. So serious gaps, giving a lot of powers to the executive, even though we say, I mean, as I speak to you now, under the Constitution, the president can fire a judge without giving any reason. Is that the kind of Gambia we want? And of course, a lot of, I know this is not the discussion for today, but on a different day, I can have all
Go ahead, bring it on.
Challenges listed. No, there are tons of them. Like I said, and at the end of the day, there is a need for us to keep holding our leaders accountable. I mean, the need for us to continue calling for good governance, the need for us to make sure all our rights are protected, a host of others. And I don't think the current constitution does that for us. It's, a lot of anti-democratic provisions. And I think it would be in the best interest of this country. I mean, look at what was recommended even before the '97 Constitution was, was adopted. There were tons of recommendations. The Constitution Commission, which was put in place before, we had elections in 1996, and majority of them got rejected at the end of the day. So for me, it's about serving the interests of the executive, and for us to continue to call ourselves democratic, we really need to move away from that. And for us to do that, we all have to be on the same page. The drafters of the 1997 Constitution knew what they were doing, which was why they made the threshold so high it would be almost impossible or extremely difficult for anybody to try to replace it. So for us to do that, we definitely have to start thinking, how best we can work together to usher in a new constitution that will serve the interests of our people.
Thank you very much. That's final take with me, Seni Marena. Thank you very much, Lawyer Gay, for joining us today in this show. Mr. Gay is a former commissioner of the Constitutional Review Commission and now the registrar in charge of appeals, arbitration, and enforcement at the ECOWAS Court. He's joining me live from Washington, D.C. Many thanks for joining me, Lawyer Geso.
Thank you, Seni. I also wanted to add, your previous segment was on hate speech. Look at Section 59B, inciting violence. Hate speech not specifically mentioned, but that should be broad enough to take care of hate speech in our context. 59B of the Criminal Code. Thank you.
Under the criminal law, right?
Criminal Code, yes.
Okay.
59B.
Thank you for bringing that to.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention, and we deeply appreciate you, joining us this afternoon from Washington, D.C. Many thanks for joining us, Mr. Gay.
Thank you, Seni, for having me. And please smile more.
Thank you. You are watching The Final Take with me, Seni MK Marena. Time to visit the 2024 Paris Olympics, where Gambians are trying to win a glory and make history for the country. Team Gambia include Finnish-born Gambian judoka Fain Jai, who is a 3-time Olympian and Commonwealth silver medalist. The Gambian judoka representing his country at the 2024 Paris Olympic Games joined us to share his profound disappointment after being eliminated from the competition and the future of judo in the country. Many thanks, Fain Jai, for joining us live from Paris.
Good evening, MK. It's nice to be on your show.
Thank you. And then congratulations for your participation in the Paris Olympic and raising the Gambian flag. We know you have been working so hard, to represent the Gambia many, many years ago. Many thanks for joining us once again.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Mr. Fai, tell us about the excitement and the opportunity to compete in your 3rd Olympics Games in Paris as a Gambian who is born, to a Finnish, Gambian Finnish parents.
Yeah, it's always an honor to represent the country in events like this. This is the highest level competition and everybody wants to be here. And unfortunately, I couldn't do any better this time. And the Spanish opponent had prepared very well against me. He had very well tactically fighting against me. And maybe this was something that I should have focused more on before the fight.
Absolutely. Now that you are eliminated and you received 2 cautions before being penalized for non-compatibility, take us through the pressure and challenges you faced in that particular match.
Yes, the Spanish had prepared very well before the fight, and he was able to take off my strengths. So he was able to block most of my attacks, and eventually, when I couldn't enter my throws, that was something which was called as non-combativity. So I was too passive in my fights, and that's why I was penalized.
Well, how do you feel about that? Because your aim at the Paris Olympic is to get a medal for your country, like you did in the Commonwealth Games. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, of course, it's a huge disappointment. This was supposed to be my brightest moment. That's what I was planning to be. So of course, it's a huge blow, and I've been preparing for this competition many months now, and it's very sad that this ends like this in the first round.
You inspire scores of young people seeking to become Olympians one day. What does the future look like for judo in the Gambia? Because you are the first professional judo player in the country that has represented the country at the international level. And a lot of young people now are looking up to you, to become the next judoka. So what does the future look like for judo in the Gambia? And what's your plan to take it to next level?
Yeah, for me, the Gambian judo has a bright future ahead because since I started to represent Gambia, it was almost 10 years ago. Nobody really knew about judo, and the federation wasn't functioning very well. When I started, there was not the actual federation in the Gambia, so we have taken a lot of steps forward. Now we have a new judokas signing up for the courses, local athletes, and we also have a new judokas who are doing competitions locally, like in Senegal, but also competitors who do international competitions. So I feel like in the future we will have a big team who does these competitions like I do.
What next for Fainjai? You have done extremely well for your country, and everyone knew how disappointed you are. So what's the future for you now going forward?
Well, for now, I take a couple of weeks of vacation at first, and I will reflect on my experience here and think about the future if I want to do more competitions or if this is time to stop. But this decision will be made after my holiday. Okay. So for now, I'm too tired to think about this, and with a fresh mind, I will be ready to see if this is something that I want to do more or not.
So far, how is your experience, your third experience at the Paris Olympic look like?
Yeah, the overall experience here has been great. We have got a lot of supporters from the Gambia visiting us here, and everybody has been very supportive. I have received a lot of messages from home, from Finland, from Gambia, and all over the world who has been following me recent months.
Yes, most of we had at least 8 athletes, Gambian athletes, competing at the Paris Olympic. At least 3-4 of them have been eliminated. What's your feeling? What is the feeling at the camp? Are you hopeful that the remaining athletes in Gina Bars and then in Gina Bars will at least have a medal or bring something good home?
Yes, of course. We have a good hype here, and we are supporting each other, and we have very positive feeling among the athletes and the coaches as well, and we hope for the best results from Gina and the rest of the athletes who are still doing their performance.
Okay. Thank you very much. Before I let you go, Fainjai, final words to those watching. What final word do you have for them, your supporters, the government of the Gambia? What should be done to improve judo? Finally, before I let you go.
Yeah, I would like to thank everybody who has been involved in this journey. This has been a long road. This started since 2021 when I was in Tokyo, and I already made the plans to continue to this Olympic cycle, and I have received so many supporters from Gambia, from Finland, and all over the world, like I said, and I would like to thank everybody who has been in this journey, and I really appreciate all the messages what I have received after my loss as well. everybody wants everybody just tells me that how proud they are of me. So this really means something to me.
Yeah, we are all equally proud for you, and we wish you best of luck in your future endeavors. That's Gambian judoka Fanjai taking us through his experience at the Paris Olympic. Many thanks for joining us live from Paris, Mr. Njai.
Thank you very much, MK.
Okay, bye. That's the final take with me, Seni MK Marena, live from our virtual studios in Seattle. We will draw the curtain here until we come your way next week for more exciting program. Thank you and do have a wonderful weekend.